You know something that's been bothering me as we've been working through these probate topics?
Let me guess. The moment when families realize the case isn't ending anytime soon.
Exactly. At the beginning, everyone assumes the court will look at the facts, make a decision, and move things along.
But that's not always what happens.
Sometimes the process simply keeps going.
Month after month.
And while the legal process moves slowly forward, something else is happening quietly in the background.
The legal bills.
Consultations. Document preparation. Court filings.
Those costs slowly accumulate while the dispute continues.
And that's the moment many families begin asking a different question.
Not just who's right? But how long can this keep going?
And that question leads us to something rarely discussed openly in probate disputes.
Episode 9.
When probate disputes turn into wars of attrition.
And how financial pressure quietly shapes many outcomes.
One thing families quickly discover is that probate disputes can sometimes last much longer than expected.
What begins as a disagreement can slowly stretch across months.
Sometimes even years.
And during that time, something else is quietly happening.
Legal costs begin to accumulate.
Attorney consultations.
Preparation of filings.
Court hearings and procedural steps.
Over time, these costs can become significant.
And this is where the economics of probate disputes begin to matter.
Because financial pressure can influence how long people are willing to continue a dispute.
And that dynamic can shape the outcome of some probate conflicts.
In very simple terms, the pattern can sometimes look like this.
A disagreement begins.
Time passes while the legal process unfolds.
And over time, financial pressure begins to build.
At first, the disagreement itself may be fairly straightforward.
A missing asset, a disagreement about records, or a question about accounting.
But once the issue enters the probate process, it begins moving through a series of procedural steps.
Filings must be prepared.
Responses must be written.
Hearings may need to be scheduled.
And during that time, legal work continues.
Which means the legal costs associated with the dispute continue to grow.
For some families, those costs eventually become a significant factor.
And that is where the final stage of the pattern begins to appear.
Financial pressure.
At that point, the dispute is no longer only about the original issue.
It can also become a question of endurance.
How long each side is willing or able to continue the process.
This dynamic is often referred to as a war of attrition.
Not because the legal question has been resolved,
but because one side eventually decides it can no longer continue.
Understanding this dynamic helps explain why some probate disputes last far longer than expected.
And why financial pressure can quietly shape the direction of a case.
In the next section, we'll look at another factor that often influences these disputes.
Why the financial pressure in probate disputes is not always the same on both sides. Another factor that often influences probate disputes is something less visible.
The financial pressure in a probate case is not always evenly distributed.
In other words, the cost of continuing a dispute may affect each side differently.
For one side, the legal expenses may come directly from personal funds.
For another, some legal expenses may be paid through the estate administration process.
That difference can create an imbalance in how financial pressure is felt.
Visually, the situation can sometimes look like this.
A dispute continues through the legal process.
Legal costs accumulate as the case moves forward.
But the pressure those costs create may not be equal for everyone involved.
And over time, endurance can become an important factor.
Not just the legal merits of the disagreement,
but also how long each side is able to continue the process.
This does not mean the legal issues are unimportant.
But it does explain why some disputes continue far longer than families expect.
And why financial pressure can quietly influence how cases evolve.
Understanding this dynamic helps explain something many families experience.
Why disputes sometimes appear to move slowly even when the issues seem clear.
In the final section, we'll look at how families can think about this reality.
And how understanding the structure of probate disputes can help guide decisions.
Even when the process feels longer than anyone expected.
So what does this mean for families navigating a probate dispute?
First, it helps explain why the process sometimes feels so frustrating.
Because the system is not designed to resolve disputes instantly.
Instead, it moves step by step through procedure and documentation.
Second, it helps explain why patience often becomes part of the process.
Even when families feel that the facts should already be clear.
Because the probate court does not usually resolve questions based on informal discussions.
The court responds to what is formally placed into the record.
And those filings move forward through the legal process over time.
Understanding the economic pressure within that process can also help explain certain decisions.
Why some disputes eventually settle.
And why others slowly fade away.
Not always because the issue was fully resolved.
But sometimes because continuing the dispute becomes difficult.
Financially, emotionally, or simply over time.
This is one reason understanding the structure of probate disputes can be helpful.
It allows families to see the process more clearly.
And to make decisions with a better understanding of how the system works.
In the next episode, we'll look at another question that often arises in probate disputes.
What options families have when the process begins to feel overwhelming.
And how people sometimes consider stepping away from the dispute entirely.
We'll explore that in the next episode.
Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you in the next episode,
where we continue exploring how probate actually works.